All right, let's get this thing going. Thank you guys for coming out. I'm Jeremy, research analyst at Messari, joined by some awesome panelists here. So we'll kind of go through, pass the mic down, get you guys' names, roles, kind of a brief story of how you got into governance in the first place, and then a TLDR of what your companies do. Traver, we can start off with you.
Yeah, how's it going, everyone? My name is Traver. I am the governance lead at Gauntlet. Gauntlet is a quantitative risk management firm. We also have a few other product areas. We are one of the largest curators on Morpho. We do, growth optimization, incentives work as well with a lot of the L2s and DeFi protocols in the space.
Hey, my name is Chris, and I'm responsible for governance in L2BEAT. If you don't know, L2BEAT is this risk assessment platform for many different L2s. And as we are doing this risk assessment, we are also delegates in many of those L2 DAOs, and that's what I do.
Hey, GM. My name is Mel. I go by Mel.eth in the metaverse. I work for StableLab. We're a professional services firm, and essentially professional services for governance primarily, as well as professional delegates. And so we operationalize and try and facilitate governance at large DAOs, mainly.
Nice. So first question here, are delegation systems reinforcing centralization? Some protocols see power concentrated among just a handful of individuals. How can governance models prevent this without sacrificing effectiveness? Mel, we can start with you.
I'll say, I think delegation systems structuralize the ability to push power sort of away from the holder, but don't necessarily centralize it at large. I think those things happen due to other factors, but I'll kick it off there and then pass it around.
So from my perspective, it's not the case. But it all depends on what is your benchmark. But in general, if you look into many, especially L2 DAOs, at any vote you've got hundreds to thousands of votes. But the voting itself is just I say that it's like the optional step. The question is how do you raise voices? How do you enable debate and enable communication? And in my opinion, compared to other systems that I've been involved with, other governance systems even, both government governance systems, but also corporate governance systems, I think that for sure what we are seeing in the crypto governance is a step forward, and it enables for more debate, more discussion, more different voices and different opinions. So I would definitely not agree with that, even though it has issues. Obviously, it's not perfect, but we are still maybe not early, but we are still developing it.
Yeah, I think it's a very broad question to an extremely inconsistent and diverse breakdown of DAOs when it comes to power, right? I think there are a few examples of extremely large and consequential DAOs. I think Arbitrum's a great example. And it'd be pretty hard to say that system is centralized, right? I think there's, design implications where you have, for security purposes, checks and balances that are probably considered more centralized, like a security council. I think as far as token delegation goes, the idea of token delegation is at its core that your largest stakeholders will have the largest amount of influence, right? So it's almost kind of like a misnomer to say decentralization to a degree. And I think that's one thing that has been kind of conflated in the space. And I think, with the new regulatory environment, we're going to start to see a lot of these larger holders become much more active. I think if you're paying attention, you're seeing that already. Large VC firms getting involved, core teams, maybe if they stepping back in. So yeah, I think it depends who you're talking about. But overall, I'd agree with Krzystof. It's an experiment. People are trusting their money in these systems, and token governance, I don't think should be ruled out for centralization right now.
Yeah, so how should people look at delegates? So if I'm a token holder and I want to delegate my tokens, what factors should I be looking at for what makes a good delegate?
Right now, I'd say it's a pretty low bar in the majority of cases. I think, being active is a good first step. Really, what you're looking for is alignment with your vision for whatever that protocol is, right? I think most people would say that is sustainability. Are you going to be around for the next 5 years? Are these decision makers empowering and funding and making tech decisions that support that vision? I think the other side of it is, there's basically two sides to this. There's governance of the protocol, and then there's capital allocation, right? And those are kind of the lens to think about it when you look at who you want to delegate to and support, how they'll make decisions in those realms.
Yeah, I think I would agree. Also, like something that I would pay attention to is, are you able to talk to the delegate? Like, do you know what the delegate thinks? Like, are you able to pass your opinion to the delegate? Like, it's kind of like your representative. You can think about it like a representative in the city council. Like, only in our governance systems you have more direct, direct ways of showing your disagreement with your representative. Because like, if you don't agree fundamentally with what your your delegate is doing, you can undelegate tokens from him. So yeah, like you've got these options, but in general, your delegate should be active, should be present, should be available for feedback, and should state exactly why is he or she making decisions that they're making.
I largely agree. I think a good delegate should be consistent. Voting in every vote is almost a form of, it shows good behavior, but it can also obfuscate other things in a positive way as well. If you're trying to execute on initiatives, if you vote in every vote, I think that's really useful. Full transparency regarding rationale, and I like access to your constituency is, as I see it, that is the function of a delegate.
Yeah, so I would like to add to it, because like voting is just one thing, but voting is only reactive. Like somebody else is putting up a proposal and you vote yes or no, or you select some options. But what's even more important is your delegate able to push his agenda forward? Like, does this delegate have any opinion on where this ecosystem should be going? Does this delegate have any idea of what the direction should be? And is this delegate able to get into meaningful conversation with other delegates to make it happen? Because like voting alone is just technical thing, but the real essence of governance is not voting. The real essence of governance is driving change and moving ecosystems forward.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, so consistency, transparency, accountability, I think is the other thing that makes for a really good delegate, which again, the reporting functions and the reporting that's done about us, I think is incredible to keep us in that place. And then yeah, execution. I think being able to relentlessly execute on the objectives of your constituency, giving them confidence you'll be able to get the things done. And I think at large too, like I would speak to the alignment function, where it's like, knowing what good alignment looks like with the protocol is the function, of a delegate at large too. So yeah, I think it all kind of ties together. But just to sum up, I would say consistency, execution, accountability, transparency make for a good delegate.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So how do we kind of prevent voter apathy? So how do we keep these delegates accountable? Are there any like incentive structures that you guys have seen work in this space that make voters kind of call out delegates? Is it just simply unstaking and delegating somewhere else, or are there other kind of incentive models you guys have seen?
I'll speak to it broadly. Like, I think of apathy as a pretty good indicator function of misalignment, and it forces quorums lower. This is again maybe a high-level hot take, and that is the risk. So if the bar to execute an upgrade of the core infrastructure of a DAO is very low, or the bar to distribute funds from a treasury is very low, that is risk, as opposed to having highly engaged delegates. So again.
Yeah, I would say that voter apathy is consequence of token holder apathy. So if the token holders don't care about redelegating the tokens to someone who is more active, then it's them to blame, not the delegate. Like, especially that in current delegate systems, as Tinom said, like the bar is set pretty low, and also the bar for what is expected from delegates is set pretty low. Like when we joined those governance systems, I had some expectations of my fellow delegates, but Who am I to say that, hey, you should be available for me to talk to? You should be, showing up to the calls. You should be, publishing your rationale in the forum. Who am I to say that? So it's also, the job of whoever is responsible for the governance system to design it in a way so that the voters have agency and they can do something. But yeah, in my opinion, this is going to be changing pretty soon. As long as governance has a real power, as long as governance, those decisions that the delegates are making have a real impact, there will be delegates and there will be active delegates. There will be people who will want to make use of this power.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think apathy is the wrong problem to try and solve in terms of engagement. I think when you start to talk about incentives, it's you're directing people to act in a certain way. Most incentive programs right now are very much based on activity and not quality. And I think there's apathy from token holders and a lot of stakeholders. And I think, like I said before, part of that has been regulatory. I think part of that is also just the nature of burnout and disinterest. But I do think we need to rethink what we want the role of delegates to be. We need to rethink how we think about decentralized strategy and governance. And really, I'd love to see baseline compensation that supports people spending time on the protocol and the ecosystem, but then actual KPIs, right? I think we can tie protocol goals and network goals like you would for a board. And say, look, if you want your L2 to be #1 in volume and #3 in TVL, whatever your goals are, you set those up and you tell the delegates, if you hit that, if we hit that as a network, you're going to get a bonus, and it's going to be a token aligned bonus, maybe at fests. But yeah, I think we need to rethink it because right now it's just farmed.
And also, one thing that I would like to add is we should normalize calling out inactive delegates. If somebody is a big delegate in a protocol and is not showing up, is not voting, not discussing stuff, then what is this person doing? Really, then this person is a problem. It's not it's not us who is a problem. This person is a problem. So if you are a big delegate in any of the protocols that I'm active with, I'm looking at you. And I will be calling you out soon.
I think some of the things we've been trying to explore too is decaying voting power. One thing also that's kind of coming online now is the ability to claw back in process a lot more easily through governance contract upgrades. So a more active token holder base within governance votes, where in some systems you don't have that ability to pull back in process. So you're essentially electing a board member that is continuous maybe forever if you don't redelegate, that can act on your behalf, sort of unilaterally in any given governance process, as opposed to sort of this liquid function that lives on top of your holdings that can act on your behalf, but you can also pull that power back at any time. So there's, I would say things are happening that are making the role, more interesting in that way too.
Yeah, so Traver, you mentioned that the bar is pretty low. How can we raise that bar, and where should the bar really be?
Yeah, I mean, this is a design problem for the people launching DAOs, right? And it really starts at what role you want to have delegates involved. And I think I think people have rushed into DAOs. I think, people ask, how do I launch a DAO? Who's a good example? There's not one because every protocol is different. You're going to have different layers of immutability in your contracts. You're going to have different goals for security. You're going to want to have different capital allocation structures if you're an L2 and you want more flexibility to give grants on the business development side versus if you're just like a DEX or AMM, right? There's not the same need for that allocation. So I think you need to build the system with those goals in mind and your business goals in mind. And the delegates that you have need to be aligned with those business goals, and that needs to be translated to your stakeholders and to the delegates. And then it also needs to be architectured in a way where they're not overrun. I mean, we talk about this at Arbitrum. It's extremely decentralized. There's a lot of noise, and it's really good, but it's hard for us to allocate time to what matters matters sometimes. So I think we're looking at it. We're building systems to deal with that, and it's part of like this amazing experiment. But that's kind of how I think about it. Like you need to have business objectives, and you need to have accountability, and you can instill that at the system level to drive more effective delegate focus.
Yeah, and I think that it really depends on a case-by-case basis. DAO is just a structure, and it can be applied to many different things. Same as structures from the traditional world. Like I am sitting on many boards in many different like regular organizations, and there is a very different expectation and very different role of the board in, let's say, a charity organization, a public goods NGO, and VC-backed startup. So, and the expectation of the board members and what does an active board member mean from case to case differs. The same way it is different, from the protocols that I'm active with, there is a very different expectation of the delegates in, let's say, Arbitrum than in Starknet, than in HOP. And it should be, but it's important for it to be clarified and clear what are those expectations. Those people responsible for those systems should make it clear and make it elaborate.
Thanks. I would just add too that I think like how to kind of move towards a better place. I think there's what I would call maybe hygiene functions within delegations that could be installed either programmatically or something Krzystof mentioned is that a good delegate can form coalitions rather easily. I think that is something where delegate self-assessments and delegate peer assessments are underutilized in a peer-to-peer space.
We'll try to add in 2 more questions real quick. So kind of going off the automation a little bit, where do you think AI-powered governance comes into play? Like as AI decision-making becomes a little bit better, do you think it's going to be used within these structures, or should we be staying away from this, or should we fully embrace?
There's an inevitability to I think automated intelligence coming into the decision flows of DAOs, whether it is between sort of whether I'm a veto function or whether I am using it as a chatbot, or I think those things are maybe all of them. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I would say that I agree it's inevitable, but like we are yet to find out like where is it useful. But I would say that it's similar again to the traditional structures that we know. If you are not willing to replace your city council with an AI agent, then probably it's not a good idea to do it also in the DAO. But if you think that there is a good idea to have city council members use AI in order to get more informed and make better informed decisions, then probably the same applies to the DAO, and you should expect delegates to be using those AI agents and AI tools in order to make better decisions.
Yeah, I think there's like an operational aspect to this, distilling information, streamlining processes, that kind of thing. I also think, I know on the Gauntlet side, like I do think we're going to see like more algorithmic management of DAO assets, right? Like we're building tooling right now. We incubated a protocol called Era that helps does this for treasury management. There's machine learning resources like we're building on top of that, right? Like that's part of what we think is going to have an impact on kind of that side of things. I think in terms of like AI delegates, I'm pretty bearish what I've seen at this stage. I think it'll get there. I'm curious to see how it develops. We've seen experiments and it's not going great so far. So yeah, we'll keep our eye on it.
And then rapid fire to close. What are you guys most excited about in the space right now?
I'm excited to see how the landscape changes as more stakeholders get active. I think we've seen kind of this like chaotic childhood era of DAOs. We've seen swings from extremely decentralized to extremely centralized in a lot of ecosystems. I think the life cycle of DAOs will be fun to watch, and how larger stakeholders becoming extremely active will play into that is going to be extremely interesting to watch from my perspective.
Yeah, I think that I totally agree, and I think that what I'm excited about is the maturity of this ecosystem and like the progress that it's going to make. Like right now, it was like random people lapping as decision makers. and soon we will see, real stakeholders LARPing as DAO delegates, and then we will find balance.
How to follow that. I think the thing I think I'm most excited about right now is redelegation, and in two ways. There's a lot of activity around inspiring token holders to redelegate more consistently, and this is in keeping maybe with board rotations at companies. I also think one of the things that's really inspiring right now is intra-delegate redelegations, which is, again, right now all delegation flows sort of stop at a delegate, and allowing delegates themselves to choose backups and that sort of thing is an area of study that I've been looking at for a couple of years, but I think it's finally hitting that point where it could become, you can hierarchically consider who might, the one individual that's in charge of a DAO, and I think we're getting more comfortable with that idea of control as long as there's pullback.
I like it. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll stand off to the side for a little bit if you guys have any other questions, but thank you.
Thank you.